When most people get into motion design, the first question they tend to ask is, what software do I need? But software is only about 10% of what makes a motion designer a motion designer. So what goes into the other 90%? If I had to start over from scratch, I would not be starting with software at all. I'd start by rebuilding my foundation with the 4 core skills that matter the most. In this video, I'm going to build a house with you. Those 4 foundation skills are actually going to be our walls that set a motion designer up for success. Then we'll build the floor, and finally the roof. Can you guess where software fits in with all of this? Let's dive in. The first foundation wall you should know about is animation basics. And normally people would say just learn the 12 principles of animation, and that's how you would build your bricks and build your wall. But you can't only learn the 12 principles of animation. That's why this foundation wall is called animation basics. Because in motion design, you need the 12 principles of animation so that you know how to animate good animation, but you also need to learn storytelling and how something communicates the story of what you're trying to say. That's a huge part of animation in general. And finally, the third brick, the third skill you would want to build and put into your foundation wall is camera shots and angles. What this means is that when the camera is focused, for instance, take the video that you're watching right now of me, this is what you would consider a medium shot. This way, it's like I'm just talking with you and we're having a fun conversation. Versus if we were to do a close-up, well, now you can really read the emotion of my face. This plays into character animation, story animation. It can even play into more motion-based animation of icons and everything, so you can know how much texture is supposed to be on screen versus not. So this is all animation basics. However, motion design isn't just animation. It straddles the line between animation and graphic design, which means on top of animation skills, another wall you want to build are your design fundamentals. What design fundamentals mean is what are you using to build your graphics so that you visually communicate an idea. These are skills that all graphic designers should know, and motion designers also need to know them because, again, between that line of graphic and animation. The 3 bricks that you're going to want to make sure are in this wall are visual hierarchy, especially important in motion design. I know if you're a graphic designer watching this, you will probably say it's also very important in graphic design. It is. I'm just coming at this from a motion design perspective. And when there is a bunch of text on screen, or you need to make sure that people know what the brand is or what the point of the whole video is, that visual hierarchy is super important, because visual hierarchy means what do you want people to see first? What do you want them left with when they turn their heads away? What do you want them to remember? And that's the first brick of visual hierarchy. Then you have the 6 design principles. The 6 design principles are contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity, scale, and rhythm. I'm going to explain how they work in motion design and design in general. But I first want to bring up the 7 elements of design. These are line, shape, form, color, value, texture, and space. That sounds like a lot to learn, but please keep in mind, most of this you've heard about. You've heard about lines, you've heard about shapes, you've heard about textures. I'm fairly certain you've heard about contrast by this point. And there is a very easy way to think of what the 6 design principles do versus what the 7 elements do. The easiest way to think of this is that design principles are the instructions on how you arrange the materials, and design elements are the materials that you make the design out of. For example, let's say you have 2 shapes on screen. Now you can communicate that they are similar by doing repetition, 2 triangles, or you can show that there is a reason that they are different by having 2 different shapes, a circle and a triangle. You can bump up the contrast by having one in blue and one in orange, and that's using color. So it's mixing and matching to communicate ideas. Moving on to the 3rd foundation wall. This one could have been a sub-skill that you learn in design fundamentals, but I decided it was too crucial to put as a sub-skill. This one is typography. Typography means the style and appearance of words. The reason why this is so crucial to design is that the font that you pick makes a difference in how the viewer perceives the text. Bricks that you want to put in your wall is going to be font choice. This means what kind of font you pick. There's several kinds of fonts out there, but the reason why font choice is so important is because it sets the mood. What's a good example? Let's say you have this wedding invitation that you are making, and then on the other side there is a government document. The wedding invitation, you're going to use this beautiful cursive, lovely font, versus a government document, you're going to use a basic standard font. It's going to look boring. But if you were to swap them around, it would look very silly if the wedding invitation had the boring text and the government document had all of this cursive font. So font choice really does matter when it comes to design and motion design. The second brick that you would want to put in this wall of typography skills is readability. You want to figure out what is going to make something very easy to read. If people can't read it, they can't understand it, and the whole animation motion design falls apart. It doesn't work. And I could go a lot more into specifically typography skills and readability and how it works, but that would be a whole other video. So I'm going to leave you with the last skill that you should be putting into your wall for typography, and that is going to be learn kinetic typography. This is motion design skill 101. Your type is going to move, whether it is a logo animation you're making or anything else. It is going to be moving text. But what is good moving text versus bad moving text? That is where the kinetic typography skill would be built. So by this point, we have 3 walls. They are all hard skills: animation, design fundamentals, and typography. The 4th wall is more mindset, because if you don't start thinking like this, you're going to find you keep hitting, this is a bad pun, a wall, because you weren't prepared for what is going to happen if you become a motion designer. This wall is called the designer mindset. And the skills you need the most in this, number 1, is taking criticism without getting defensive. Your work is going to get critiqued. You are going to be asked to make changes to it. And this isn't any fault of yours or that you created subpar work. It is because the client or the company that you work for is not going to have the same vision as you all the time. They might also decide that they need their project a certain way versus how you're thinking of it. As the designer, it is your job to show why you're making a certain choice and why you think that this is going to be the better option for the client and the company. But in the end, they are going to make some changes that you're not going to want to make, but you have to make it because it's their project. The second skill you want to know about is others' perspective matters. This sounds similar to taking criticism, but this brick is actually about a common design problem: designing for yourself instead of others. When you're starting out your design career or just designing in general, it's very easy to make stuff according to what you want. And sometimes that works, because sometimes you are designing something and it's just for friends, family, and it is perfect because you know those people. Other times you are designing for a specific person in mind. And if you don't think about what their needs are, your design is going to fall flat. Let me use a common design example. Let's say you're designing a motion design with a lot of text, and you know it's going to be shared with older people. Take a moment and look at these 2 fonts to either side of me. Which size do you think would be the right one to use? It's going to be the larger one. And the reason is it's easier for an older person to read the larger text. But if you were designing for somebody in their 20s, 30s, 40s, using the smaller text, perfectly fine. The last brick in the designer mindset is try again until it's nearly perfect. And the reason why I say this is that it's rare that an animation is going to be perfect on the first pass. And you're going to want to refine and try again, even if it's a little frustrating that it didn't work out perfectly the first time. Sometimes you're going to come down to a deadline, you're going to be running out of time, and you need to get it 90% of the way there. And at that point, you have to make a decision. Okay, it's good enough. It's time to stop and move on. We all want to have all the time in the world to make our designs perfect. It just doesn't always work. And it's figuring out when you can say, okay, I did my best, time to move on. Those 4 animation basics, design fundamentals, typography, and the designer mindset, those make up the walls of the house. But you still need to build the floor and the roof. Let's start with the floor. The floor in the house is meant to be a stable, level place that you build up from, right? So then if we have our foundations, what would be our floor? Our floor is actually the question, what is motion design? Because when you start looking into motion design, you can have this common misconception. You can think motion design is all characters. You can think it's typography. You can think it is just a still image that gets moved around on screen. The truth is that motion design, the definition is that you are communicating an idea through motion. That means that motion design is a huge industry, even if it's not widely known or realized. Motion design can include characters, it can include typography, it can include brands, it can include logos, which is brands. But I'm like trying to think what else is off the top of my head. You could even go a little bit into the editing space with those lower thirds. Again, there is just a huge range of what motion design is that people don't even realize. So the reason why this is known as the floor is because when you know where in motion design you want to go, You can actually even tailor your foundation walls to get you to the skills you want faster. For instance, if you were to do more character-based stuff, your animation skills are going to be focusing more on body mechanics and facial expression and very much more emotional storytelling versus somebody who is going to be going into kinetic typography, where there's going to be a lot less camera angles and shots. It's going to be focusing more on design fundamentals and the typography skills that I've talked about. Finally, we are up to building the roof. The roof is the software, and it's the roof for a couple of reasons. Reason number one being that just like a normal roof, in 10 years, you're going to have to replace that roof. There is a good chance that you will have to learn another software in 10 years. In the meantime, before you have to do that, you can patch it up when there's software updates, you learn the new updates, and those are your patches. But software is ever changing. It's very rare that it lasts for very long. I think right now, the longest software that I know about is Adobe After Effects. And even then, I feel like it cannot have been out for more than, I'm not even going to guess. And the other reason why software is the roof is because it's the last skill you will finish learning. It's something you're going to learn as you build your foundation walls and as you learn the skills, because you're going to need to use the software as you do this. But the exact software actually does not matter. You're just going to pick your software based on what you decide you want to do, which is when you plan your floor, you build your skills, you learn the software, and then it all comes together. Now it's time to answer the question, which software should you pick as a motion designer? It depends on what you want to do. There is no good answer. Even the answers I'm going to give you, they're just the ones that I've learned about over my years of my career. And I still think that you could pick any software that you want, and you can still be a great motion designer. If you want to hear about what I would recommend for 2D animation, I would recommend After Effects and Illustrator. Those two work wonderfully together. And Media Encoder, because you can render stuff in there and keep working on After Effects projects. And then if you wanted to learn more software after that, I'd recommend Premiere if you wanted to go more into editing. And I should mention, if you want to test any of the Adobe software, there are free trial versions. I have a link to their website down below. But if you decide that you want to do more 3D stuff as a motion designer, this is actually a little bit out of my wheelhouse because I haven't used those skills for years. But I have tried several programs over the years. And I've discovered usually what you can do in one program, you can do in another. It's just learning the software and how the system works. Cinema 4D is mostly used by motion designers. It's an industry standard. But if you just want to explore 3D without buying anything, I highly recommend Blender. I was using it in between jobs when I was challenging myself to learn a 3D program. And there's tons of tutorials out there. It's really fun. By the way, you can start building any of those 4 foundation walls. You don't have to start in the order that I gave them to you. The goal would just be to pick one to get started. In true transparency, you will be better in some areas than you will be in others. And this could be because some parts are going to come easier to you, or you're going to get really passionate about one of these. For me, by this point, I'll say I have all of these skills, but I am most passionate and invested in typography and animation. I'm good at mindset. I've worked hard to learn my design fundamentals. Which do you think you'll enjoy the most? If you want to dive more into motion design or animation, check out one of these videos next.